World of wonder. I know about dinosaurs. Dinosaur World. Dinosaurs were the dominant land animals throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, 206 to 65 million years ago. But their world was very different from ours. Land masses lay in different positions from today and formed vast supercontinents, such as Gondwanaland and Laurasia. For long periods of time, the continents were connected, and dinosaurs could walk to all parts. Early in the Jurassic, and again in the Cretaceous, sea levels rose and areas of land were flooded by seas, isolating dinosaurs on smaller island continents. The world of the dinosaur.
Conditions during the time of the dinosaurs were a lot hotter and wetter than they are today. This warm and often humid atmosphere gave rise to lush, dense vegetation. At ground level, there were ferns, and in wetter areas, horsetails. Woods and forests were dominated by palm-like cycads, ginkgos, and conifers. Dinosaurs shared the plains, forests, and swamps with many other groups of animals. Pterosaurs and primitive birds flew overhead, while lizards scampered under their feet. Turtles, frogs, and crocodiles inhabited lakes, rivers, and marshes. And our ancestors, the early mammals, hid in trees or among rocks.
Flowers. Plant communities changed dramatically in the Cretaceous with the appearance of flowering plants. These very successful plants soon dominated plant life. Sea life.
During the time of the dinosaurs, the seas were dominated by marine reptiles. Ichthyosaurs, the fish lizards, were very similar in size and shape to dolphins, and probably fed on fish and squid. Plesiosaurs, the top predators, had powerful jaws and rows of sharp-pointed teeth, which they used to kill and tear apart their prey. They were up to 39 feet, or 12 meters, long, and had a small head on top of a long, snaking neck.
Dragons of the air.
The skies above the dinosaurs' heads were filled with pterosaurs. With broad, membranous wings and fur-covered bodies, most pterosaurs fed on fish or insects that they caught while flying. Early pterosaurs were about the size of a crow. However, later forms grew very large, reaching giant size with wingspans of 39 feet, or 12 meters, the size of a small airplane.
Early mammals.
The first mammals evolved from a group of reptiles that existed long before the arrival of the dinosaurs. Early mammals, such as Megazostrodon, were hairy and usually no bigger than a hamster. They did their best to avoid predatory dinosaurs by only coming out at night. With their sharp eyesight and sense of smell, they caught and ate insects, snails, slugs, and other small delicacies.
Soft tissue and DNA. Usually only the toughest parts of dinosaurs, their bones and teeth, survive to become fossils. Soft tissues, such as the internal organs, muscles, and skin, decay very quickly or are eaten by predators or scavengers. But sometimes dinosaurs were killed and buried very quickly. Some were smothered by huge sandstorms, while others fell into dark, poisonous sediments at the bottom of lakes, and parts of their soft tissues were preserved. Skin is the most likely to be found because it is relatively tough, but remains of muscles have recently been discovered, and some scientists claim to have found blood cells and even fragments of dinosaur DNA. Real DNA from dinosaurs?
U.S. researchers claim to have extracted DNA from well-preserved dinosaur bones, and Chinese scientists claim to have recovered it from a dinosaur egg. New tests show, however, that it is modern, not ancient DNA, and probably comes from contamination of the specimens when they were handled by humans. In the film Jurassic Park, scientists brought dinosaurs back to life by growing them from cells into which they had injected dinosaur DNA, extracted from dinosaur blood, found in the gut of blood-sucking flies preserved in amber. Theoretically, this technique is possible, but there is less than a 1 in a billion chance that a complete DNA sequence could be found and extracted. The cost of such a technique would be enormous. Because soft tissues affect the skeleton, paleontologists can use the shapes of bones to try to reconstruct the muscles, guts, and brains. Knobs and crests on limb bones tell us much about the size and position of muscles. Internal casts of the brain case reveal the size and shape of the brain, and the size and shape of the ribs shows how big the guts were. Entombment in amber is one of the best ways of becoming a fossil. Bones, soft tissues, and stomach contents are preserved in the finest detail. No dinosaurs have ever been found in amber, but lizards, mammals, and insects have been preserved this way. If most or all of the skeleton is found, paleontologists are able to reproduce how a dinosaur looked and behaved with a high degree of accuracy. Once the muscles have been placed over the skeleton, the whole animal can be covered in its skin. Although some skin remains have been found, they only tell paleontologists the skin's texture. For an idea of its color, scientists look to animals that are alive today and have a similar way of life to the dinosaur, i.e., are they hunters or grazers?
What is DNA? DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is the recipe that cells use to build living organisms. The DNA is stored in the nucleus, which acts as the command center of the cell. Under rare conditions, bits of DNA have been preserved in fossils. Pelecanimimus.
Traces of soft tissue around the skull of Pelecanimimus, an unusual new ornithomimosaur found in Spain, show that this small dinosaur seems to have had a small crest on the back of its head and a pouch in the throat region. Perhaps Pelecanimimus was a fish-eating dinosaur, which grabbed prey using its 200 or so small, sharp teeth and stored them in the throat sac, much like a pelican does today.
Scaly hide.
Impressions of scaly skin, much like that of living reptiles, have been found in the fossils of 2 plant-eating hadrosaurs that died in dry semi-desert conditions and became mummified. The armored skin of 4-legged ankylosaurs had bony plates and spikes. They also had clubs on the end of their tails, which they could swing violently to defend themselves.
Dinosaur tracks. In recent years, there has been a great upsurge of interest in dinosaur tracks. These tracks are very important because they provide the only direct evidence of how dinosaurs lived. From tracks, we can tell how dinosaurs stood, how they moved, how fast they could run, and whether they lived in herds or on their own. Many tracks show that some dinosaurs, such as sauropods and ornithopods, lived in herds. Lots of tracks, heading in the same direction, equally spaced out and all bending at the same time, show that they were made by a herd passing by and not by lots of single animals over a long period of time.
Dinosaur trackers working in North America have found huge numbers of tracks made in the same 100-million-year-old coastal plain sediments. These run north to south for about 40 miles or 65 kilometers. This megatruck site, named the Dinosaur Freeway, may have been used as a migration route.
Pterosaur tracks.
Since the late 1970s, there has been a furious debate about how pterosaurs moved on the ground. New, well-preserved tracks found in both the United States and France in the early 1990s show that these bat-like creatures were flat-footed and walked on all fours.
Death by dinosaur.
Life was dangerous in the time of the dinosaurs. Even if you were not caught and eaten, you could be crushed to death. This was what happened to a group of shellfish trampled to death by a sauropod paddling along in a shallow lake in Colorado 150 million years ago.
Stand up straight.
Paleontologists have long argued whether ceratopsians like Triceratops had upright forelimbs or whether they stuck out to the side like lizards. Tracks made by Triceratops and recently found in rocks near Denver, Colorado, show that ceratopsians stood upright when they walked. Tracks have shown some unusual features of dinosaur behavior. In one example, one of the toes from the left foot of a theropod was missing. The tracks also show that the dinosaur walked with a limp, as shown by the short, irregular steps it made.
Nesting dinos. Paleontologists have long known that dinosaurs laid their eggs in nests, and thought that, like other reptiles, they left their young to hatch out on their own and fend for themselves. But an astonishing discovery made in the Gobi Desert in 1993 shows that some may have sat on the nest. A complete skeleton of Oviraptor, with its legs tucked beneath it and arms curled around its sides, had been buried in a sandstorm while sitting on a nest of 22 eggs. Nesting grounds.
Dinosaur nesting grounds containing lots of closely spaced nests that seem to have been used year after year were first reported in the 1980s. New discoveries in Mongolia show that sometimes different kinds of dinosaurs nested together. Indian paleontologists have just discovered a dinosaur hatchery that contains the fossilized eggs of titanosaurs, large sauropods, and might be 600 miles or 960 kilometers long. Clutches of dinosaur eggs were laid in many different ways. Most were laid in circles, but some were laid in rows, either in arcs or in straight lines.
The discovery of an Oviraptor sitting on a nest of eggs has altered paleontologists' view of the role of dinosaur parents. They now appear to have cared for their young until they were quite developed.
Huge numbers of dinosaur eggs have recently been found in Cretaceous rocks in China. Among these are the largest eggs ever found, and the eggs of the therizinosaurs containing complete and beautifully preserved embryos at various stages of development. It is very rare for dinosaur embryos to stay this intact. Tiny, fragile bones of baby pterosaurs were recently found by Russian paleontologists in sands laid down in an estuary in Central Asia some 80 million years ago. The babies, which must have been looked after by their parents, probably fell from nests built in large plantain trees bordering the estuary. Like modern-day birds, baby dinosaurs may well have used egg teeth to chip their way out of the egg. After a while, this egg tooth may have fallen off. The young dinosaur may also have been helped out of the egg by the parent. Alternatively, the egg may not have had a tough shell, but, like the egg of a turtle, may have been quite leathery and relatively easy to hatch out of.
Embryos.
Embryos are very rare, but sometimes, as in the case of these Oviraptor embryos discovered in Mongolia, they are found still in the egg. Not only does this tell us what dinosaur embryos looked like, it also tells us which kind of dinosaur laid the egg.
Egg thief. Oviraptor, was long thought to be an egg thief that gobbled up the eggs of Protoceratops, a small sheep-sized ceratopsian. It was believed that Oviraptor would crush eggs between its large, curved, horny jaws. In fact, it was a dutiful parent staying with its unborn young even to the point of death. T-Rex revealed. For many, Tyrannosaurus rex is symbolic of dinosaurs as big, fierce, and extinct. But we know surprisingly little about T-Rex. It is only in the last few years that complete skeletons with skulls have been found. Much work remains to be done on these before T-Rex gives up all its secrets. For many years, T-Rex was thought to have stood and walked in an upright position, but new models based on studies of well-preserved fossils show a much more aggressive, agile-looking animal with its head thrusting forward and a long, stiff tail counterbalancing it behind.
In modern crocodiles, the first chevron, a bony spike found under the tail vertebrae, is smaller and farther from the pelvis in females than in males, probably to leave more room for eggs to pass. Exactly the same situation has been found in skeletons of T-Rex.
Bitten by a Rex.
Deep bite marks in the bones of a Triceratops found in Montana in 1995 match the shape of Tyrannosaurus's teeth and show that this dinosaur had been chomped on by T-Rex.
Speed limit.
New studies on the design of the skeleton of Tyrannosaurus have found that this dinosaur was so heavy that it would be badly hurt or possibly killed if it fell over while running at more than 20 miles per hour or 32 kilometers per hour. But Tyrannosaurus rex didn't need to run fast. There was nothing to run from, and prey could always be ambushed and killed with a single bite. Close relatives of T-Rex include Albertosaurus, Daspletosaurus, and Tarbosaurus. All lived at about the same time as Tyrannosaurus in the same region and were about the same size and shape. A new relative, Siamotyrannus, was found in Thailand in 1993. A lot smaller than Tyrannosaurus and at least 30 million years older, it gives us some idea of what T-Rex's ancestors looked like. The massive mouth and huge jaw muscles gave T-Rex an immensely powerful bite. It would have been able to chomp a human in half with one snap of its jaws. Strong wear patterns on their teeth show that tyrannosaurs regularly chewed up flesh and bones. Scars on their skulls also show that they often fought each other. A new study by the American paleontologist Tom Holtz confirms ideas that T-Rex is more closely related to coelurosaurs, small, lightly built two-legged hunters, than any other dinosaur. A vital clue comes from the shape of the foot bones. In both the feet of tyrannosaurs and the coelurosaurs, the middle bone of the three toes is pinched slightly at the top. This shows that Tyrannosaurus was a super heavyweight coelurosaur.
Who owns Sue? Sue, discovered in South Dakota in 1990 by Susan Hendrickson, is one of the most complete and best preserved examples of T-Rex. Unfortunately, there is a dispute over who owns Sue: the people who found her, the man who sold it to them, or the Sioux Indians who own the land. Until this is sorted out, Sue is being held under arrest by the FBI in Rapid City, South Dakota. Theropod predators. Two-legged theropods, including T-Rex, were some of the largest and most ferocious predators of the dinosaur age. Newly discovered remains of one, Carcharodontosaurus, including an almost complete skull, reveal the huge size of this African dinosaur. Found in 1995 by an American expedition to the Atlas Mountains in Africa, this dinosaur had a skull that was 5 feet, or 1.6 meters long, and may have been even larger than T-Rex. Carcharodontosaurus was a frightful predator, capable of killing and consuming other large animals. It shared its habitat with Deltadromeus, a smaller predator. Eoraptor.
Dinosaurs were just appearing 230 million years ago. One of the first was Eoraptor, found by Paul Sereno in Argentina. This small, lightly built dinosaur was only about 3 feet or 1 meter long. It was certainly one of the earliest and most primitive theropods known, and might even be closely related to the ancestor of all dinosaurs.
Afrovenator.
In 1993, an expedition to Niger, Africa, led to the discovery of Afrovenator, a large predatory dinosaur that was 30 feet or 9 meters long.
Between 1986 and 1990, joint Chinese-Canadian expeditions to northern and western China found large numbers of new fossils including Synraptor, Monolophosaurus, and Sinornithoids. Many of these new specimens are now on view in Chinese museums.
The theropod Giganotosaurus lived about 100 million years ago and may have been the largest land predator ever. The skull is about the same size as that of Tyrannosaurus, but its leg bones are a little longer and sturdier, suggesting that this animal was heavier and even more massive than Tyrannosaurus.
Baryonyx. Finding a skeleton is only the first step in a long task of collecting a new dinosaur. It took more than 10 years for the staff at the Natural History Museum in London, England, to free the bones of Baryonyx, a predator, from the rock in which it was buried 120 million years ago. Allosaurus mystery. Ever since the 1950s, paleontologists in Central Asia have been finding odd pieces of some very peculiar, large, long-armed dinosaurs from the Cretaceous era. The first bones to be found were thought to be those of turtles, and even when they were identified as a dinosaur, no one could agree as to what kind of dinosaur it was. The discovery of a nearly complete skeleton of Allosaurus has cleared away much of the mystery. Allosaurus is a therizinosaur and shows that lots of other odd dinosaurs belong to this group. But what did therizinosaurs use their peculiar teeth, long arms, and huge claws for? Lifestyle.
The odd shape of Allosaurus's teeth suggests that it fed on plants, such as the leaves from ginkgo trees. Sitting or squatting on its haunches, Allosaurus dragged branches and fronds towards its mouth using its powerful arms and long claws. Alternatively, by rearing up on its hind limbs and supporting itself with its forelimbs, Allosaurus could reach up with its long, flexible neck to strip leaves from the tops of small trees.
Ginkgos, one of the few remaining examples of non-flowering plant groups known as gymnosperms. The ginkgo tree was once abundant in the time of the dinosaurs, but is now only found wild in China. Habitat.
Fossils collected from the sediments in which the bones of Allosaurus were preserved show that this animal lived in a well-vegetated river valley, which included conifers, ferns, and flowering plants. Allosaurus shared this environment with turtles, the crocodile-like Champsosaurus, and Psittacosaurus, a small bipedal plant-eating dinosaur.
Whose relatives? Therizinosaurs have such a peculiar body that it has been very difficult to find out which major group of dinosaurs they might belong to. Some paleontologists put them in a separate group all of their own. Some thought that they might be related to sauropods, while others put them in the middle between sauropods and theropods. However, newly discovered remains show that they are theropods.
Each of the 3 fingers of Therizinosaurs bore a large claw. The claw was long and narrow, but straight rather than hooked, as it is in flesh-eating dinosaurs.
The hips of Therizinosaurs are massive, and the legs relatively short and sturdy. The feet are quite broad, and Therizinosaurs probably walked in a flat-footed fashion rather than running on their toes. Skulls and teeth.
The preserved skull of Erlikosaurus is the best evidence we have to tell us what the head of Therizinosaurs looked like. The skull was small compared to the rest of the animal, the eyes were large, and the snout was long. The teeth were small and pointed, and not like the dagger-shaped teeth of typical flesh-eating dinosaurs. The arms of Allosaurus are quite long, while those of Therizinosaurs, its larger descendant, are extraordinarily large, and perhaps longer even than the hind limbs. The upper arm bone, the humerus, bears an enormous bony crest for the attachment of a huge chest, or pectoral muscles, and shows that Therizinosaurs had extremely powerful arms.
Horned dinos. Ceratops, the horn-faced dinosaurs, were so common throughout the late Cretaceous that they have been called the sheep of the dinosaur age. Early forms such as Protoceratops were not much larger than sheep, while later ceratops such as Triceratops were often as big as a rhinoceros or even larger. These plant eaters had strange crests and horns around the skull, and parrot-like beaks that were used to chomp up tough plant material. Even though many ceratops have already been unearthed and described, new ones, including Ionosaurus, discovered recently in Montana, continue to be found.
Immense bone beds, consisting of the jumbled-up skeletons of hundreds and sometimes thousands of ceratops, have been found in North America. It seems likely that these animals were killed by a catastrophe, such as a huge flood.
Feeding.
Ceratops had a toothless beak which they used to bite off plant twigs and leaves. Tougher material was sliced up in a scissor-like fashion by teeth at the back of the mouth.
Horns and frills. Ceratops are distinguished by an astonishing variety of horns, as well as a selection of frills that were also edged-in horns. The full display was only developed when they reached full adulthood.
Ceratops were almost certainly preyed upon by theropod hunters. If they were threatened by a predator, herds of Ionosaurus could protect their young by bunching together with the adults facing out on the outside. This is similar to the behavior of modern-day musk oxen from the Arctic.
What's in a name? Each species of dinosaur has a scientific name composed of 2 words written in Latin or Greek. The name usually describes a predominant feature of the animal. For example, Ionosaurus procurvicornis means buffalo lizard with a forward curving horn.
It seems likely that the horns were used for display purposes and also for fighting. This points to the existence of hierarchies within herds. The horns may have been used to gouge and stab attacking animals, or even other members of the same herd. They may even have become interlocked, as can happen with the horns of modern antelope and deer.
Youngsters.
In some dinosaurs, such as the Psittacosaurus and early ceratops, There are fossil remains for all stages of growth from the very young to the fully grown adult. Like human babies, young dinosaurs had skulls with large eyes and separate bones to allow for lots of growth. These separate bones would fuse together to form a single skull in later life.
Giant dinos. There is probably a limit to the size to which animals can grow, and it seems likely that sauropods got close to that limit. Seismosaurus, from the late Jurassic and found in New Mexico, was about 150 feet, or 46 meters, from nose to tail. It was probably the longest sauropod. Ultrasaurus, found in Utah, was 50 feet, or 15 meters or more in height, and was certainly the tallest. In terms of sheer size, however, a recent discovery from Argentina, Argentinosaurus, currently holds the record for the biggest dinosaur, with an estimated weight of up to 100 tons. It takes time to grow to such a large size, and animals such as these probably lived for 50 to 100 years, or perhaps even centuries. Latest finds.
The latest discoveries of sauropods came from Madagascar. The most important find is an almost complete titanosaur. So far, fossils of this important but poorly known group of late Cretaceous sauropods have been very fragmentary.
Ultrasaurus. This huge plant eater was more than 82 feet, or 25 meters, long, and weighed up to 50 tons. In relation to the rest of its body, it had a small head that sat on top of a towering, giraffe-like neck. Supersaurus. Weighing about the same as Ultrasaurus, this dinosaur had a neck that was 32 feet, or 12 meters long, allowing it to pick leaves from very tall trees. Argentinosaurus. At 3 times the size of Seismosaurus, and with an estimated length of more than 100 feet, or 30 meters, Argentinosaurus may have been the largest land animal ever. Each of its fossil vertebrae alone weighs a ton. Sauropods get a grip.
The hand of sauropods had a claw on the thumb. Scientists have often wondered what its function was. New findings show that it was probably used to grip trees as they stood on hind limbs to reach high into the foliage for the most succulent leaves.
Amargasaurus. Amargasaurus, a sauropod from the early Cretaceous and discovered in Argentina, was 33 feet, or 10 meters, long, and had pairs of spines that ran down its neck and along its back. These spines supported an extraordinary sail which might have been used for display or perhaps for defense, preventing theropods from biting through Amargasaurus's neck.
Sauropods are long thought to have eaten stones and kept them in their gizzard to help grind up food. New discoveries on the Isle of Wight in Britain show that this was indeed the case. Seismosaurus, the ground shaker, from the late Jurassic, is probably the longest dinosaur that ever lived. To compensate for its extreme length, it may have had rather short legs to give it stability.
Birds that fill the gap. Archaeopteryx, the most primitive known bird, pterosaurs were not birds, has lots of dinosaur characteristics and shows that birds evolved from theropods. Until recently, Archaeopteryx and 1 or 2 other species, such as Hesperornis, were the only known birds from the age of the dinosaurs. There was little evidence indicating exactly when and how birds evolved. Fortunately, the last 10 years have seen some spectacular discoveries. These include fossils from China with feathers preserved intact, and the dinosaur-like bird Mononychus found in Mongolia. These show how the bird wing evolved and how other important features such as perching developed. Flock of birds from Spain.
Important discoveries of early birds have recently been made in Spain. The skeletons of Nogueornis and Concornis have features which show that although these birds were around only a few million years after Archaeopteryx, they had well-developed wings and were strong flyers. Special adaptations in the foot also allowed them to perch on branches like modern birds.
Archaeopteryx.
Archaeopteryx. The relationship between dinosaurs and modern birds first came to light with the discovery of a feathered dinosaur in 1861. This animal was named Archaeopteryx, ancient wing, and was clearly an early bird, but it had one or two strange features. Although the head is fairly bird-like, its jaw was lined with small teeth, whereas birds have beaks or bills. Archaeopteryx also had a long bony tail with feathers growing along it. In contrast, modern birds' tail feathers all grow from the base of a stubby tail. Called Mononychus, this animal from the late Cretaceous was about the size of a turkey. It had a skull very similar to a bird's, but a pelvis not unlike that of a dinosaur. The most distinctive features were its short, stubby forelimbs, each with a single claw. Scientists cannot agree whether this was a flightless bird or a peculiar burrowing dinosaur that used its forelimbs to dig into the ground.
Confuciusornis.
In the last few years, many examples of Confuciusornis have been found in China, dating from the early Cretaceous. It was well designed for tree climbing, but its wings were far too short to make Confuciusornis a very good flyer. The discovery of Protoavis was probably the most controversial find of the last decade. Some paleontologists argue that Protoavis was a bird. If this is true, then birds must have first appeared more than 50 million years earlier than Archaeopteryx.
Age of the birds. This diagram shows when various birds lived. The examples include 1. Archaeopteryx, 2. Mononychus, 3. Enantiornithines, 4. Patagoopteryx, 5. Hesperornithiforms, 6. Ichthyornithiforms, and 7. Modern birds. Extinction theories. Death is inevitable for all individuals, and species are always disappearing. This is called background extinction. Sometimes entire groups can disappear. This occurred at the end of the Cretaceous, 65 million years ago, when the dinosaurs died out, along with many other types of animal and plant life. Such events are called mass extinctions. As well as being bad news for some groups, it can be good news for others, allowing them to arise from obscurity and take over new habitats. Many theories exist as to what caused mass extinctions. These can range from the serious, such as volcanic activity and a meteorite impact, to the bizarre, such as a space-borne plague or even alien hunters. Volcanic eruptions.
Huge volcanic eruptions are known to have taken place at the same time as mass extinctions, including the one at the end of the Cretaceous. These eruptions may have led to acid rain on a global scale, a mini ice age, and then an abrupt swing into a greenhouse-type climate. This could have killed off the dinosaurs. Many other groups, including the pterosaurs, marine reptiles such as plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, other forms of oceanic life, which include the ammonites, and some kinds of plants all died out together with the dinosaurs.
A mass extinction at the end of the Triassic may have allowed the dinosaurs to rise to prominence, while another at the end of the Cretaceous finished off the dinosaurs and gave mammals their chance to evolve. Target Earth.
The impact of a large meteorite may have caused a global catastrophe big enough to wipe out the dinosaurs. But where's the crater? A huge bowl-shaped structure, more than 113 miles or 180 kilometers across, has been found near Chicxulub, the Devil's Tail, in Mexico. It was formed 65 million years ago, exactly when the dinosaurs died out. Meteorite impacts are very common. The Earth is constantly being hit by small bits of debris from space. However, large impacts occur less frequently. Meteor Crater in Arizona was caused by a meteor that hit the Earth only 50,000 years ago.
Are they extinct? In many ways, it can be said that not all of the dinosaurs were killed off by the mysterious mass extinction 65 million years ago. Their descendants, the birds, can be found on every continent of the world. These successful animals range in size from tiny hummingbirds to eagles, penguins, and enormous ostriches. Glossary. Ammonites. Coiled shellfish that are closely related to squid and octopus. They died out at the end of the Cretaceous period. Ankylosaurs. Four-legged plant-eating dinosaurs that had heavily armored bodies and sometimes had massive clubs on the end of their tails. They include Ankylosaurus and Euoplocephalus. Ceratopsians. Four-legged plant-eating dinosaurs that often had beaks and horns. They include Triceratops and Protoceratops. Coprolites. The fossilized remains of dinosaur dung. Cretaceous period. A period in the Earth's history that lasted from 135 million years ago until the extinction of the dinosaurs some 65 million years ago. Dinosaurs. Taken from the Greek for terrible or fearfully great lizard. The term refers to a group of land-living reptiles that flourished between 225 million years ago and 65 million years ago when they became extinct. DNA, short for deoxyribonucleic acid. This is the recipe that cells use to build living organisms. It is stored in the cell's nucleus. Embryos. The very early stages of a young animal before it has been born or has hatched. Extinction. When a whole group or species of animals or plants dies out. Fossils. The preserved remains of something that was once alive. They can be formed in a number of ways, including burial and the chemical change of the body parts into minerals. Gondwana. The large and ancient southern continent that was made up of what is now South America, Africa, India, Antarctica, and Australia. Gymnosperms. A group of plants that do not produce flowers. The last remaining example of these once widespread plants is the ginkgo. Hadrosaurs. Plant-eating dinosaurs that often had duckbill-shaped mouths and a crest on the top of their heads. They include Edmontosaurus and Maiasaura. Hibernation. During winter, many animals hibernate to conserve energy through the cold months. This involves slowing down the body's processes and spending the time in a sleep-like state. Ichthyosaurs. a group of sea-living reptiles from the age of the dinosaurs. These swimming animals had very streamlined, fish-shaped bodies. Jurassic period. A period in the Earth's history that lasted from 200 million years ago to 135 million years ago. Laurasia, the large and ancient northern continent that was made up of what is now North America, Europe, and Asia. Migration, a movement from one place to another. Animals generally migrate to avoid the cold of winter or to search for food. Paleoichnology, the study of dinosaur footprints. Paleontologists, people who study fossils. Permian period, a period in the Earth's history lasting from 290 million years ago to 245 million years ago. Plesiosaurs. Although not actually dinosaurs, these flesh-eating sea creatures were around at the same time. Pterosaurs, flying reptiles from the dinosaur era. They were distantly related to dinosaurs. Sauropods, large plant-eating four-legged dinosaurs. They included Seismosaurus and Diplodocus. Tertiary period, a period in the Earth's history that lasted from 65 million years ago to 1.8 million years ago. Tethys Sea, a body of water that separated Laurasia and Gondwana. Therizinosaurs, plant-eating dinosaurs with long arms and huge claws. They include Allosaurus and Therizinosaurus. Theropods, a range of hunting dinosaurs that usually stood on two legs. They include Tyrannosaurus and Eoraptor. Titanosaurs, very large sauropods. Triassic period, a period in the Earth's history that lasted from 245 million years ago to 200 million years ago. The dinosaurs first appeared toward the end of this period. Tyrannosaurs, large two-legged flesh-eating dinosaurs. They include Tyrannosaurus and Albertosaurus.